I had a couple hours before my evening talk, and I went for a little walkabout. This was in Philadelphia. I thought I'd go to see that Mutter Museum that has all the old weird medical oddities from the 19th century. And so I exited the hotel, one of these multi-story hotels, and I started out on the sidewalk, and I was wearing this suit. And it turns out back in January, we were in Las Vegas for the big Randy conference, the amazing meeting. And one night we went to see the Penn and Teller show, the magician's Penn and Teller, and they end the show with this terrific double bullet catch where Penn's on one side, Teller's on the other side. They each shoot these .357 Magnums, which the bullets go through plate glass, to pieces of glass there. The bullets themselves have been signed by 2 volunteers, the casing and the bullet, and then you can see when the volunteers look at the 2 bullets that have crossed the stage, the one bullet is now in his mouth, the other bullet's in his mouth. And I got to be one of the volunteers for this. And it was pretty cool. My bullet that I put little MS on there actually ended up on the other side of the stage. I don't know how they did it. All I know is that they didn't actually shoot it and catch it. We know that much, but it's a good trick. Anyway, I got to keep the bullet. And I had put the bullet in this pocket. So now months later, I exit the room, and I'm walking out of the hotel, and I hear this noise. And I look up, and there's a crazed evangelist who has heaved a Gideon's Bible out of the room, and it's hurtling toward me, and I ducked, and the Bible struck me right in the chest. And that Bible would have gone right through my heart if it weren't for that bullet. So, not sure the relevance of that.
I like it, though. That's good.
Mostly made-up story. Miracles do occur. Well, I've written many times about this kind of 3-tiered model that I put together when I originally wrote Why People Believe Weird Things, and I've just sort of applied it in various books. That is, what is the relationship of science and religion? Just roughly speaking, there's the sort of conflicting worlds model, same worlds, so they're in conflict, same worlds model, and then the separate worlds model. So largely what we've heard so far and will hear will fall into one of these 3 categories. Obviously, there's subtle differences, but just as a working model, it helps us to get our minds around this. So in the same worlds model, the idea is that science and religion are just 2 different ways of looking at the same reality, and therefore we should have sort of mutual respect for them. Somebody like contemporary times here, Owen Gingrich book, God's Universe, and perhaps Francis Collins' book, would be in this category. They're completely friendly to science. They accept all the findings of science, and they feel that the science just illuminates what they already believe. In my opinion, in virtually every case, these are instances of people that already believe for other reasons, and then they use the findings of science to support what they already believe. And that's almost always the case, because the reason people believe anything usually has to do more with psychology and sociology and how you were raised and the emotional impact and importance of the belief, and then you back into it with rational arguments after the fact. That's what most of us do most of the time, politically, economically, ideologically, in every which way, including religion. So that's the same worlds model. The conflicting worlds model, which is held by virtually all of my atheist friends and fundamentalist Christian friends, is that one of them is right and the other one's wrong, depending on the particular thing you're talking about, and therefore you really need to pick one. One of them's right and the other one's wrong. And then finally, the third separate worlds model. This would be best supported, I suppose, by Steve Gould's NOMA idea, non-overlapping magisteria, that they're really 2 different things, like plumbing and baseball or something. They just have nothing to do with one another. And so, therefore, they can't be in conflict. I guess we can just sort of think about that heuristic as we hear different views. I think the answer, it depends in large part on what your goal is. I've been thinking about this a lot lately because since I'm in the business and I read all these books, I find myself in agreement with almost everybody. And how can that be? You have to be one of these tiers, don't you? And I think it depends on what your goal or purpose is. If you feel like, say, Sam does, that religion is really a dangerous social force that could bring down the demise of Western civilization, something like that, then the idea that, well, we should make nice because we want to teach good science, and we want everybody to embrace science, and so we should be polite to religious people. Well, that's sort of irrelevant if you think your larger goal here is, I'm going to save Western civilization because look what the people that, like terrorists, can do to us. So you would then pick which of these categories or which attitude you want to take toward religion, depending on what your purpose is, what's your goal, what are you trying to accomplish. So when I read like Dawkins' book, I can't find much that I disagree with it at all, and yet I would never take that approach. And why is that? And because I think I have a different goal. It depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to talk religious people out of their beliefs, that would be one form of strategy. You would take a certain strategy to do that. If your goal is something else, then maybe that wouldn't work. I'm not saying this very well, but so let me back into it in a slightly different way. If your goal is to lead a rational, logical life, that is, you want to use science and reason and rationality and logic and so on to derive your ideas, to try to understand how the world works, and you want to apply this across the board to everything you do, including the derivation of your ideas, but more than that, how you act in the world. If you have derived certain ideas based on science and reason, and then you apply behavioral methods that do just the opposite of what your goals are, which I contend most contentious attitudes toward religion will do just the opposite of what most people claim they want to do. That it's not just that, well, you're not making nice, or, you know, you should really sacrifice your principles in this particular instance because we have some other goal. That isn't the reason. Or we want to promote science education. That isn't the reason. It's that you're actually being irrational if you're doing something that does not accomplish your goal, that actually interferes with your goal. So you have to apply rationality, reason, logic, science, whatever, to all aspects of your life. And if you're going to do that, then you have to set your goals and determine, well, is it social context, social intelligence, social skills, emotional intelligence, how you interact with other people matters every bit as much as how you derive the age of the earth or whatever particular doctrines you believe. I saw this example. I'm not a member of any organized political party. I'm a libertarian, which is like herding cats in an election, next to impossible. And I've been that way my whole life. And libertarians have the same problem, which is where I learned this principle, was that they're so fanatically focused on particular doctrines that you have to believe if you want to be considered a libertarian, that they exclude almost all other libertarians. So almost nobody's a member of the group, which, you know, talk about small tents. And so people like Ayn Randians, objectivists who are also atheists, would go around like assaulting people that wore crosses because they believe in God. And it's like, okay, but wait a minute. I thought your purpose was here, we want to have a liberal democracy and a free market, and we want to promote these ideas of economic freedom. When you assault somebody's religiosity, how is that accomplishing this other goal? In fact, it's going to do just the opposite. So in that sense, they're being irrational, and I claim so are depending on what your goal is. If your goal is just, let's just be blunt. Let's say I'm pissed off about religion, and I want to get in people's face and tell them that I think you're being irrational, and you're an idiot. You're a moron to believe this stuff. Okay, if that's your goal, then by all means go for it. But what will that actually accomplish? And what are your goals anyway? So that, I think, helps us kind of set the stage for what it is we're trying to accomplish. I think Darwin said this well. I take two sources for this. The first, the great libertarian writer Ludwig von Mises wrote in the 1950s against his fellow anti-communists, that being an anti-communist is completely against what it is we're trying to do. It just virtually advertises the position we're against. You can't be against something. You have to be for something. And until you're for something, we're not going to accomplish any goals. And Darwin said something along the same line. Since his name will be invoked throughout this weekend, I thought I'd read just a short section from my book about his own beliefs. He was a creationist when he was in the Galapagos. He was a creationist when he left the Galapagos. He was a creationist until he got home and started thinking about this. It's too hot and miserable in the Galapagos to do any theorizing, as I discovered. So, and we also know he didn't he wasn't an evolutionist in the Galapagos because he didn't even record the islands from which he got the different specimens.